Good evening, everyone. It's This is 17 o'clock, 5 o'clock p.m., and it's time for class. Um, the attendance this evening is quite low, and our facilitator is already in class waiting for us. So we are going to give 5 more minutes for others to join in, and then we kickstart. Thank you, everyone. Okay, good evening, everyone. It's 17:05, and it's time for class. So taking us this evening is Mr. Camry Apollo. He'll be taking us on the fourth estate in the democracy. And I'll just be reading a brief bio of our facilitator this evening. Mr. Camry Apollo is a broadcast journalist who focuses on development journalism. He's also a communication strategist and media trainer with a background in architecture. He believes his 1.5 decade long experiences in the agro-commodities exports market, mining sector, and finally information technology sector opened up life's diverse perspectives and prepared him for his true passion in life, journalism. Camry finds the inner workings of the human mind absolutely fascinating, as says he possesses a more than casual but less than formal interest in psychology. He considers himself a patriot who takes time out to volunteer as a mentor for the National Youth Service Corps Leadership Program, an assignment that is very dear to his heart. In 2013, Camry started out as an anchor on WEFM 106.3, a talk radio station in Abuja. He was named head of programs and subsequently head of station, a position he held until he left the organization in 2021. Today, he's the head of news and general manager of Radio Now 95.3 FM, a Lagos-based media house that focuses on national development, social consciousness, and advocacy. His motto informs how he lives his life: live well, love well, and die well. So, ladies and gentlemen, our facilitator for this evening, Mr. Camry. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. Appreciated. It's always a delight to hold these lectures. First of all, Wumi, can everyone hear me clearly?
Yes, sir, we can.
Perfect. So let's get started. So once again, to the management of the Electoral College, the distinguished members of this class, good evening, everyone. My name is Camry Apollo. It might be an unusual name to you, but it's a name I've been dragging through my life for the last few decades. It spells Kamri, pronounced like the car Toyota, but different spelling. I'm honored to be your facilitator for the topic, the fourth estate in a democracy. So this is how the lecture will go, hopefully, today. I will start off by talking to you about what the term fourth estate means, and then I'll do my best to talk to you about who a journalist is and the rules that govern our craft. From there, we'll move on to the effects of the fourth estate on governance and agenda setting. Very important, this one. I'll round off the lecture by talking about information management, which is also very, very important in this day and age. So let's just jump right in. First of all, what does the term fourth estate mean? The fourth estate in the realm. What does that term mean? Well, the term refers to the power, the immense power, because it is immense. It refers to the power that news media has. Now, in the past, a couple of people have been credited with coining that phrase, the fourth estate in the realm. The first person that's credited with coming out with that phrase is a British parliamentarian, MP, Member of Parliament, Edmund Burke, in the 18th century. The second person that's credited to have come up with the phrase, the fourth estate, is an English writer, William Hazlitt. He lived in the 19th century. Now, in most democracies, constituted power is divided among three arms of government, yes? We've got the judiciary, the executive, and then we've got the legislature. That's how power is divided. The three arms of government, as we know them, or the three estates, if you will, because each arm is an estate. These estates are, the judiciary, executive, and legislature. These three estates are our version of the modern realm. When I talk about realm, I'm talking like a kingdom, basically, and I'll explain. Each arm has its own specific functions, which they are intended to carry out in the best interest of the people. The way government is set up in a democracy is such that no one arm is more important than the other, but collectively, they're meant to give us good governance, yes? Now, the principle of separations of power. in our democracy and the ability of the three arms to apply themselves in service to the people is absolutely crucial to any country's development. So that being the case, how did the Brits come up with that term, the fourth estate, the fourth arm of government of the realm? Because I just talked about three arms: judiciary, executive, legislature. So what is this fourth estate? How did it come about? Again, back to our writer and member of parliament. In the 19th century, another writer, Thomas Carlyle, this was in the UK, he credited Edmund Burke with the statement. Edmund Burke is a parliamentarian, or was a parliamentarian, who said that the reporters' gallery that runs round the top of Parliament, he said that reporters' gallery that overlooks parliamentary activities, he said that gallery is more powerful than the three estates in the land at that time. Remember, you're talking 17th, 18th century. That's what he said. He said that gallery where the reporters stand is more powerful than the three estates at the time. At that time, the three estates were the king, because it was King of England at that time, not a queen, the king, the clergy, that's the second estate of the British realm, and then the commoners. Some of you have heard about the House of Commons. So that's what that means. That refers to the three estates in the realm. The fourth, as Edmund Burke said, is that gantry that runs right along the top of Parliament where reporters sit and observe. Now, that word commoners, as I said, it refers to the British House of Commons. Anybody know why it's called the House of Commons? Because these are parliamentarians, they are people's representatives. Why do they call it the commoners? Sorry, Wumi, I'd like to make it as interactive as possible. So if anybody has an answer to the questions I will ask every now and then, please indicate by putting up your hand and the moderator will cue you in to answer the question. So first question is, why do they call a parliament the House of Commons? Why is it called the House of Commons? Anybody? Any hands? Let me give it a quick second. Okay. Or you can leave your response in the chat box. I'll do my best to alternate, pop in there, see who's written down an answer, read out a couple, and then we'll continue. All right, no hands for now. So I'll just move along. The reason it's called the Commons is because the people, all right, we do have someone. Elugbaju. Mitch, I'm guessing that's short for Michael. Can he be unmuted, please, Wumi, very quickly? Okay. Good afternoon.
Currently, we do have a dual mandate of common.
I'm sorry, you've got a very noisy background. Let's just do some quick housekeeping. Again, it is our intention to make this as interactive as possible, but if your background is a bit noisy, we won't be able to take your responses for obvious reasons, okay? It's better we hear very clearly what is being said without misconstruing your responses. So let's take the next person, Ahmed Mohammed Labbo.
Hello, good day to you all.
Good day, Ahmed, please.
What I understand by the word House of Commons, from what I've just read from the material that you have provided us, there are people like they were selected or nominated from the community in order to represent them at the House of Commons in making decisions to see everything work smoothly. They are, in essence, like a legislative, that they represent their people from the grassroots. Yeah, that's what I think about it. That's what I have.
The reason I asked that question is very important in our conversation going forwards. That phrase "commons" doesn't mean it is ordinary, doesn't mean it is. Okay, very important we understand this. The word commons comes from communities or communes. It doesn't mean common meaning, oh, you can easily discard this is just a common this, a common that. No, it's not a derogatory term. It's drawn from a collection of the people. That's what it is. So let's move right ahead. Now back to Edmund Burke. So his observation again was.
Could I put in my input?
Oh yes, ED.
So for me, I think it's named House of Commons because the other house is the House of Lords, and the House of Lords connotes royalty and etc. Of course, people with title. So the other house is is an untitled house, hence the name House of Commons. Not because they are commoners, but because one is a titled house, the House of Lords, and that's the other house in England, and then one is named House of Commons. But that's just me off the top of my head. I'm actually trying to find out what exactly it is.
Okay, ED. Well, let me just quickly touch on that. ED is correct as usual. His knowledge of different democratic systems of governance around the world still continues to astound me. House of Commons are elected officials, elected positions. House of Lords is divided up into different categories, and the House of Lords in the UK actually outnumbers the House of Commons. This is weird for some people because they think Senate, but no, the House of Lords is made up of titled holders. It is made up of inherited positions. It is made up of even the clergy. The British Parliament, the House of Lords, actually set aside, I think, 24 or 5 seats for the clergy. So they recognize the importance of religion in lawmaking. So they even have seats set aside for the clergy, Archbishop of Canterbury, and so on and so forth. So that's what makes up the Lords. The commoners, they are elected and whatnot. And also the House of Lords, somebody who is deemed worthy by, let's say, King Charles. King Charles could give you a peerage, which is like naming an estate after you, giving you a family crest and appointing you to the House of Lords. There are over 700 of them, House of Lords. That's how much there are. Yes, it's ridiculous. But there you go. All right. So let's go back to, again, Edmund Burke. So again, Edmund Burke's observation is about the influence and the power that the people who stand in the gantry that overlooks Parliament's activities, the power they have by virtue of the fact that they take information, they cover the proceedings of governments, they take that information to the people in their publications, be it wireless radio, be it telegrams, be it newspapers, because people are not physically present when matters of state are being decided, but the press, they are always there. So the information they take, they bring that information to the people, and that is why the power they have is immense. Because the parliamentarians could conduct some very important, very useful activity, and you and I would not know because we've not been told. And we don't have an opportunity to be there all the time. So we have to rely on the press. So ever since then, that term, the fourth estate of the realm, it has grown in its role of probing, of questioning the activities of the 3 arms of government. It's not just parliaments, but all arms of government. So by carrying out that responsibility, it basically makes government accountable to the people. The Nigerian law, through the 1999 Constitution, also gives life to our press and media in Chapter 2, Section 22. The key lines there state, the press, radio, television, and other agencies of the mass media shall at all times be free to uphold the fundamental objectives contained in this chapter and uphold the responsibility and accountability of the government to the people. So the last few words there encapsulates everything. Many of you here, politicians, political party members, and so on, I'm certain, well, not certain, I can't be certain because I've not asked you all, but I like to believe you all have a copy of the Constitution handy on your phones, your tabs, your laptops, and so on. So go there, Chapter 2, Section 22. Give it a good read. It will further deepen your understanding of the legal backing the Constitution gives to the activities of the press. Now, I've been choosing my words very carefully, and we'll come to that in a second. News media has been called the guardian of democracy and the defender of public interest. News media. It's important we make that distinction between news media and social media. Social media is a very powerful tool. It's a very powerful tool anywhere you go in the world today. It's given rise to so much, literally. It's given us so many options and problems as well. But it's important we make that distinction, news media and social media. In very basic terms, I'll use as much layman language as possible instead of reverting to jargon, because some of you are not journalists, I believe. So let's keep it clean and simple. So in basic terms, news media is called the fourth estate because it reports news that is generated by journalists. That's the main difference. While social media is news or information that's generated by anyone who can create and share content. That's social media. The big difference is one, journalist, the other, I won't say not journalists, I will say it's generated by anyone who can create content. A few weeks ago, there was a conversation over the rights of people to be able to relay the news. Some media houses came out and kicked against it and said, hey, no, we are journalists, we are different, we're not like the other ones. But I asked the question, it's one thing for me to go and study journalism. It's one thing for me to be certified as a journalist. And it's a very different thing for me to practice journalism. You can have all the certification you want, but your act, what you are doing, is it in conformity with the ethics of the profession you've been certified for? So again, it's a different thing. And I think the conversation as we move forwards will open up a lot more possibilities regarding information management. Okay? So let's get back to the core of it. Who is a journalist? Important we understand this, so we understand what they do and how what they do affects us. Well, a journalist, in simple terms, is someone who investigates, collects, and presents information as a news story. In my intro there, when we told you, I'm a broadcast journalist. So in my industry, broadcasting, there are many people who are not journalists. I started out as a presenter myself. Today, I'm a broadcast journalist because I have gone to acquire the skills necessary to pursue this passion I have of getting to the root of things and then, making that information publicly available. Public interest stories, especially those hinged on social justice, these are the things that drive my passion of my profession. So again, presenters may call themselves broadcasters, radio presenters, TV presenters. They can call themselves broadcasters, but that doesn't automatically make them journalists. They have an ability, they have a skill, they can present content that is prepared, could be prepared by a journalist, but they are skilled presenters. They're able to navigate conversation without actually being the ones going out and gathering this information, being driven to find out what's going on. It's a different thing. Now, journalists, like the general public, we, like you, we have the right to free speech. In fact, free speech is one of the founding principles of the press. I've moderated thousands of hours of interviews and discussions on many conflicting matters. By conflict, I'm not talking about, killings and this, that, the other. In life, conflict is inevitable. We will always come into points of conflict, but violence is avoidable. If you manage conflicts properly, you could prevent violence. Conflict is simply people with a difference of opinion, a different way of doing things. If those differences aren't managed, it could give rise to violence and so on and so forth. So I've moderated thousands of interview hours and lots of conflict. And what I always tell my guests, especially when the conflict is about something that is considered to be, very sensitive, I always tell them that everybody has the right to an opinion. We don't have to agree with one another, but we must respect the fact that we are all entitled to our opinions. And our opinions are different from the facts. The fact is always going to be the fact. Truth is relative. Your opinion is also, up to you, but the fact is the fact. So very important we understand that free speech is fundamental to our profession. But here's the thing, with that right to free speech also comes a huge responsibility. Now, I'm talking about journalism here. It's a huge responsibility which is closely regulated. Different people have their different opinions on gagging the press, letting them do this, that, the other. I'm not going to get into that because it's a matter of perception and perspectives, powerful tools. Sometimes perceptions do not align with reality, but they are very, very important, whether they are true or not. If a person feels what they feel, and that feeling is in large numbers, as a government, it's your responsibility to take note of it and do something about it, even if it's not the true position of things. So perception is very important. Now, organizations like the National Press Council, the National Broadcasting Commission, and so on, these organizations regulate our press here in Nigeria. They regulate our press. And in the first week of April last year, in fact, right after it happened, the Nigerian Press Organization, which is made up of the Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria, the Nigerian Guild of Editors, and the Nigerian Union of Journalists, they got together and formed a 9-man board of the newly established National Media Complaints Commission. That commission was set up as a self-regulating body for our industry. Now, as time goes on, we'll assess our capacity to self-regulate, but we are a regulated industry in spite of the free speech we have. It's important we understand this. Now, let's look at social media. Social media, on the other hand, is not regulated by the same laws which regulate journalism. Social media has its own regulator. Its own regulator is civil law. Think about it for a second. You can go on your social media page, which is your domain. You can put up whatever you want. If the information you put up harms somebody's reputation or makes them feel in a certain way, the courts are there for them to, resort to complain, and so on and so forth. It will be determined in a court of law. Now, some days ago, talking about this, the president's chief of staff, that's Femi Gbajabiamila, he said that social media has become a societal menace and must be regulated. He was speaking at the book launch of former Lagos State Governor Babatunde Raji Fashola, Manchester United supporter, always. Sorry about that, had to slip it in. Now, the book that Mr. Fashola wrote is called Nigerian Public Discourse, The Interplay of Empirical Evidence and Hyperbole. Now, that's a different conversation entirely, all right? And it's a conversation I would love to have with the executive director, Mr. Kunle Lawal, very soon. The interplay of empirical evidence and hyperbole. Again, as I said earlier on, perception is a powerful force. Whether it is based on fact or not, it is powerful. How then do we navigate that space when it comes to governance and nation building? All right, so let's come back to journalism in the fourth estate. So as a regulated industry, my industry is governed by certain principles. I believe the 5 principles I'm about to get into now pretty much will suss out everything. Some people will tell you there are 10 principles, there are 7 principles. I want to keep it simple to these 5 core principles that govern the fourth estate of the realm. I've relied on the work from the Ethical Journalism Network. Let me give them their due credit. The first one is truth and accuracy. Journalists cannot always guarantee truth, okay? We can't guarantee the truth, but getting the facts right is the cardinal principle of our profession. Journalists must always strive for accuracy. We need to give all the relevant facts that we have, and we need to ensure that those facts are good and true and they have been verified and checked. And if we cannot corroborate any information we are putting out and we feel compelled to put out that information, we need to say so. For example, if somebody gives me a call now, someone that I know very well, somebody in my profession, and says, Camry, XYZ is happening in this place right now. People are doing this, that, the other. It is breaking news. It's a big thing. If I'm on air and I feel compelled to take that breaking news, which I will not really, without going through my process, but if I feel compelled to mention it for fear of saving lives, for example, while I go about checking, I will say this just in. Information has reached us that XYZ is happening in this place. We cannot verify the facts at this time, but we call on the authorities to look into it and people to be cautious. That is how I need to present that information. Instead of saying, somebody that I know very well called me and told me fire is burning in this place, so I should just tell people fire is burning. No. I need to be truthful. I need to be accurate. If I'm going to put out information that I've not verified, I need you to know. I need my followers, I need my viewers, I need my listeners to know that this information, I have not verified it yet. So truth and accuracy. The next one is independence. Journalists, our independence is very important. If we're not independent, then our ability to do our job becomes a huge problem. We are not supposed to act on behalf of special interests, whether they are political, corporate, cultural, and so on. It doesn't matter. We're not expected to act on interest. But here's the thing. We're human beings as well. We've got feelings, we've got emotions, we've got personal opinions about this, that, the other. So how do we navigate that space in the course of doing our jobs? It's a tricky space. The ethics of the profession say we should make those declarations. I'll give you an example. When the governor of the CBN was first arrested, Governor Emefiele, not long after that, a few days later, a friend of ours, See, I'm saying a friend of ours, a friend of mine, let me speak for myself. I know the ED might have a hint of who I'm talking about because I will not refer to the person by name. A friend of mine was also invited for questioning. The reason is he is very, very close to MFLA. In fact, they are business partners. And when I heard about the arrest of MFLA, I knew this person would be invited very soon. Our business partners, this person went to the same school as us, university. He lives in Lagos. He's the leader of his community. Now, when we were discussing that arrest in our daily editorials, in my newsroom, we have editorials at least twice a day. So when the conversation came up in the morning editorial, somebody tabled it and said, look, this person has been picked up. I want to look into this story because of XYZ. Immediately, I stood up as the head of news and I said, okay, stop. I am going to recuse myself. And I told them why. I said, I am connected to this person. We are friends. So I'm going to step outside and let you guys do what you need to do in line with the ethics of our profession, in line with our company's editorial policy. So this is what's meant to happen. I recused myself. They looked into it, they investigated it, and they took the conversation. They got across to some of the person's aides, did all the routine stuff that needs to be done. You ask them the hard questions. And they did so very, very well. I might add, I actually commended them because my concern was one of them would say, it is Oga Camry's friend. Let us watch what we're doing. No, immediately I recuse myself. This is what my profession says I must do. If there's any sort of conflict of interest, compromise, and my bias might come into play, I need to immediately recuse myself. So independence is very important. Another principle for journalism is fairness and impartiality. Most stories have more than two sides, not less than two sides. Let me be very precise. Now, while we are not obligated to present all the sides, because something could be so complex and so multiple that if you say you're going to wait till you have, everybody's voice there, things could happen, especially in the matter of life and death. So there's a lot you need to weigh. So we're not under any obligation to present every side, but we are obligated to be balanced and we must have context. Context is key. In much public discourse, context is taken out of the equation, especially some of you lot, politicians. If you want to have a conversation, you would pick the parts of the conversation that speak to your advantage or speak to your strengths, and you would present that. While it cannot be said to be lying, because a lie is an untruth, it is not the complete picture. So it's a very gray area that, especially the political class will employ every now and then as you go about your job. So as a journalist, I can't do that. I'm compelled to give that context and let the people choose the information that they will be happy on or unhappy about. That's up to them. Now, objectivity in my profession is not always possible. Sometimes it's not desirable, especially when you're talking about very, very nasty things that happen. The most heinous crimes, killing of innocents, minors, for example. But impartial reporting builds trust. Now, I'll give an example of times when objectivity is not possible. Many of us are following the developments coming out of the Middle East, the Gaza Strip. We've spoken to both sides and we will continue to speak to them. As the head of news, it means I have the power to shape and influence the news that we put out on our platform. It's a huge responsibility, and I need to try to be as balanced and objective as possible without letting my emotions come into it. But looking at the discussion around the bombardment of Gaza by Israel, if you look at Western media in the first months of the campaign, the narrative was very, very strong. Efforts was made to lead off with words like terrorist organization Hamas, killing and kidnapping and the alleged raping of 1,000 plus Israelis and so on. So that would be put out first. While that information went out, many people were outraged, but that's not the complete story. So as in head of news in my organization, I told them, first of all, we will not refer to this as the war of Israel against Hamas. It is not a war on Hamas because the civilian casualties that we are hearing are too high. Collateral damage is significant. A war means two sides come out and engage themselves in battle. What happened is one side, one terrorist organization crossed over into Israel and wreaked damage and havoc that is absolutely condemnable. In retaliation, the Israelis have come out and they have been bombarding, and that's what I called it, Israel's bombardment of Gaza. They've been bombarding and pounding that place for a long time. So a war, again, in my understanding, is different. I look at the issue of the Middle East from a humanitarian perspective, without trying to justify anyone's actions or condemning anyone's actions or defending anyone's actions. One thing is certain, there are innocents caught in the middle of this. They don't have a voice to shout out, and that's where the press comes in. So as a newsroom, this is my direction, and I've explained this to the reporters under my charge. I have not compelled them, but I've simply said, this is my view. I want you guys to go and think about it, and you report it according to your beliefs and your understanding of what is happening. Okay, so fairness and impartiality is a powerful tool, is very important if you're going to practice ethical journalism. And then another principle that governs our profession of journalism is humanity. Whatever we do, we must do no harm. What we publish or broadcast can be hurtful. It could lead to the loss of life. We need to be aware of the impact of our words and our images, the impact they have on the lives of the people. We must always consider humanity. There's a phrase I use when we look into stories: public interests. So if you come to me, for example, in my organization where we have a clearly defined editorial policy, and you tell me a senator was caught having an affair with this person, having an affair with that person, having an affair with the other one, and so on and so forth, that doesn't fall in line with my editorial policy. I'm sorry, but I'm going to tell you thank you very much, and I'll simply toss it in the bin. It's not in line with what we are doing. We're after something else. We practice accountability journalism, which is a whole different range of journalism altogether. It's a challenging one. I don't want to get into the technical details with you, but how does this senator's having these affairs, that's what I would ask you. How does it impact on his ability to do his job, to do right by the people? If it hinders his ability to do his job, I might be interested. But if you've come to me with some sleazy tabloidy kind of thing that really is not anyone's concern here or there, what he does in his bedroom, that's his concern. I'm sorry. I would, chuck it aside. I won't be bothered. I'm more concerned about his actions and how it affects the public good. I'm not about his morality. I'm not his priest or imam. That's left to him. Okay? So it must always be about humanity. These are the ethics of the profession. Accountability is another principle that governs my profession. A sure sign of professionalism and responsible journalism is our ability to hold ourselves accountable. We are human beings. We will make mistakes. Mistakes are costly in my business, especially when you talk about integrity. When people start to doubt your ability to give them accurate information, your business is not long for being chucked out, seriously. So when we make mistakes, we need to correct them. And when it comes to eating humble pie, as some people have called it, that's correcting mistakes. Many of us are cynical. We will just simply toss out the apology. Hey, okay, I'm sorry. That's cynicism. My profession tells you how to do it properly. If, for example, there was a headline that came out last year about Octoberish, I believe, Gawan is dead. Some people took it, social media was agog and so on and so forth. And, the former head of state came out and said, hey, I'm still here, I'm still alive. I plan to be around for quite a while. Some media houses are taking this. Now, the thing is, because they rushed to the press and put out this thing, the apology that must follow that error should not be on page 2. It must be on the same front page where you put that very same headline. If you put it on your prime programming, you need to put it, your apology needs to be on that same prime spot of programming. And you need to tell the people, apologies, we were misinformed, or this, that, the other. You must apologize. If you've got a fragile ego, this is not the business for you. I'm sorry. It isn't. So we need to be very, very accountable. We must be very accountable in what we do. All right, any questions so far? We're getting into the interactive parts. If you've got a couple of questions, note them down. And when we come to the next interactive part, we'll field your questions. So again, these are the core principles that govern journalism. That's what I've just discussed with you now. Many other principles could be taken out of the 5 principles I've just put out to you now. Now let's look at, the effects of the fourth estate on governance. I've just told you what it is the fourth estate does, how it does it, and how it should do it. What are the effects of this on governance? Now, Nigeria is a very good example of how influential the fourth estate is in the lives of people. Not everybody has an Android phone, and not everybody is consuming news and current affairs on their Android phones, okay? But this is the scenario that plays out. If you happen across a group of people in many parts of Nigeria, happen across a group of people around many newspaper stands, you see them having heated discussions, especially markets and so on. You hear them having heated discussions in their little groups. Those debates that they have derive from their very diverse interpretations of the headlines that they read on the pages of dailies and newspapers. Headline writing is a different thing entirely. Many people in my profession do it unethically. They are driven purely by profit without consideration for some of the principles I've just talked about. So people tend to consume, what it is the fourth estate puts out, and they read the headline and then they engage in shouts and this, that, the other. Many of them, you'd think they were news analysts for like 30, 40 years. The thing is, this is the only source of information on governance for many of them. That's what it is. So it goes without saying that our responsibility, that responsibility that we carry as journalists in Nigeria is absolutely huge. The guiding principle with what we do and its impact on people is this: if we write it, they will read it. If we say it, they will believe it. This is the power of influence and suggestion that, journalism around the world has. These 2 phrases, again, they serve to remind us that we, in the press, we have the power to shape public opinion and agenda. It's simply what it is, okay? So let's talk about some of these effects. Let's start with our ability to determine public focus and to set agenda. I'm gonna really, hang on to this part. We will really get into this part. We'll dwell on this part because I hold a personal opinion that as a media in Nigeria, news media, we can do better with agenda setting. We can. So this part is going to be interactive. So you lot ready? Again, please show your hands. Make sure your background is not noisy. And Wumi will admit you to answer the questions. So here we go. What is Nigeria's most urgent problem, and how do we address it right now? I know I've put an answer there. If you have a contrary view, please let's see what it is. Okay, we got Kasiana Mukuru.
Yeah. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Kasiana. Please go ahead.
Okay. People have this notion. Anyway, I heard somewhere that journalists are trained to lie. I need you to expatiate on that. Is it true?
It is not true. Journalists are not trained to lie. Scoundrels lie. You don't have to be a journalist to lie. Different people lie. Journalists are not trained to lie. Anyone who's been in this course of studying journalism is not a journalist. Okay? There's something else, but not journalists, no. Does that answer your question, Kasiana? Okay.
Hello.
Okay, Ahmed, go ahead.
Yeah. As you wrote, your answer is about cost of living is very high and so on. But to my own understanding, yeah, it's among it as of this moment. But definitely, I think what is happening in Nigeria is due to the lack of how the government are initiating youth into doing something meaningful, like in the terms of having jobs, having a lot of things to do. You will see most of Nigerian youth, 70% of us, at least 30 to 40 are undergraduate without doing anything also. So all these things rise to a lot of things that we are seeing now. It is manifesting is due to the lack of productivity of these youth. That is contributing to all this cost of living and so on, because Nigerian government are not like using the human resources they had on youth on a positive note. This is the problem. This is the cause root of the problem we are facing.
Okay, Ahmed, thank you so much. You're talking about unemployment. Caroline Nimbian.
Good evening. Thank you so much for the insightful session. So my question is more like a follow-up on the first question. It's often said that journalists lie because they don't give like actual values. Because let's say journalist is reporting like a death situation, and then the person, instead of recording, let's say there was a death of, let's say, 500 people, the journalist brings it down to 100 or probably 50. Is that not a lie, or is there let's say is there a policy that guides that in journalism? Thank you so much.
Okay, Caroline. I will say this. Your question, you've expatiated on what the first bloke asked, is this. I can't say if 10 people die and the journalist reports 3. I don't want to just say, oh, it is a lie. You know, lying is a technical thing. Lying is misleading someone deliberately. Okay? There are certain lies. There are lies that are done intentionally, some unintentionally. Am I correct? So to answer your question, if a journalist puts out the wrong information, and this is how we classify it, something is either accurate or it is inaccurate. As to the reasons for the error, those are numerous. There are any number of reasons why somebody could put out inaccurate information. One, they don't know what the real information is and they want to put out something so they don't feel left out. 2, they deliberately want to downplay a situation. Okay, they don't want it to seem as grievous as possible. 3, maybe somebody was instructed to do something, they don't understand why, and they don't have the presence of mind to question. So there are many reasons on why inaccurate information is put out there. Because when you say lie straight away, in my industry, if I use the term lie, an industry practitioner knows what I'm talking about. If you're not a journalist and you want to break it down to that singular words lie, you will miss out on a lot and it could happen again. So it's very important to understand this thing that has happened. Notice, I'm not saying lie. This thing that has happened, we saw 10 people dead. This man reported 3. Why? If you don't try to get to the bottom of that and you just want to say, the person has lied, and you don't understand why, you will fall victim again. So I call it inaccurate information, and I'm not being, as I said, clever by half. I'm not trying to be politically correct. I'm the last person, I guarantee you, that is trying to be politically correct, okay? But when there's a problem, it's important you try to understand the problem and why it happened. If you don't have those 2, you're in trouble because it will happen again and again and again. All right, next question. Sorry, next answer. We have Sunday Olubi here. I'll just take 2 more after Sunday, yeah, so that we can move along. There'll be other chances. Go ahead, Sunday.
Okay, good evening, sir, and good evening, everyone. And thank you very much for the lectures this evening. Very thoughtful and very interesting as well. Okay, 2 things, sir. What do you have to say, or what's your take on sensationalization in broadcasting or journalism, right, in Nigeria? Secondly, what do you have to say about some media houses during political season? Take, for instance, the last presidential election, general elections in Nigeria, 2023. Most of us, not just me now, I discovered that some politicians use some media houses, I wouldn't want to mention names, for their own political agenda or political promotions and all of that. And I think, in my own opinion, it is not good, because I think the media ought to be neutral in political seasons like that. So, sir, what's your take on these two things, sir? Thank you very much.
All right, I'll take the first one first. It's very straightforward. Sensationalism is absolutely ridiculous. You find it with media houses who are focused on the commercial side of the business rather than the public goods the service is meant to do. Okay, it's condemnable. We have a very strong policy against it in our editorial policies, and we are constantly renewing it. As I said, there's a process towards managing information that we receive before we put it out there. I'm not in a rush to put out news, and I keep telling my newsroom this. Accuracy first. Accuracy first. Everything else can follow. There's no point in rushing and putting out the wrong information. It's absolutely ridiculous. So accuracy for us first. There was a time when, if some of you remember this, the then governor of Taraba, Suntai, had an air crash. I don't know if some of you can remember this. Many media houses went around, hey, Governor Taraba is dead, this, that, the other. I was under a lot of pressure then at the news house I worked in to put out the news because, hey, everybody else was putting it out. And I said, yeah, but there's a way. We have a system in place for a reason. If we're going to throw away this system when it serves us, then what's the point in having it? So I put my foot down. I caught a lot of flack, even from my bosses. Check people at this, that, the other. As it turns out, what happened was the man had his aircraft, he crashed. He was evacuated to a hospital. His commissioner of information had to drive down to the place, put eyes on him before the proper news came out. And that is the news I took because I had 24-karat gold information. So it's very, very delicate. Many media houses, there was another prominent national media house that also didn't put out the news. In fact, I'll be honest with you, when they didn't put it out, that's what flew my red flags, first of all, because I know they've got coverage everywhere. And this is important news. And I said, there's a reason these guys haven't put this thing out. Let me try as hard as possible to get to, I come from that part of the country. So I said, I need to get to someone I know and I trust that will go there and look and tell me, this is what I'm seeing right now. This is what I can see. So accuracy first. Sensationalism, well, that's for those who do it. And I have nothing more to say about that as far as that's concerned. Now, as far as politics go, if you look around the world, many democracies, you find very powerful politicians doing their best to control the narrative. It's not just here, it's all over the world. America, the UK, this, that, the other. It's about controlling information. In fact, it makes me ask the question, how free is freedom? You know, we live under the guise of, oh, we live in a free, society because we've got the right to do this, that, the other. Yeah, but how free are you? If the choices before you were choices that were pre-made by somebody, they made the short list and gave it to you and say, choose out of these ones. Is that really freedom? Or are you simply deciding on one of this handful that they have pre-selected and put before you? So the concept of freedom, it's very important. I think it's a debatable one. But with that question, especially politics, there are many politicians around the world who understand the power of the media. They do their best to wield their power there. While the trick is to not only own the media house, but to allow it to be a professional organization as much as possible. And then you can try to inject some of the nuances of your principles, your political ideology into it without compromising the core reason the media exists. It's very tricky. Some do it well, some don't, but it's not exclusive to Nigeria. I hope that answers that question. I'll take a couple more. Okay, Musa Saliu. Musa, please go ahead.
Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. So actually mine is considering the ethics that you talk about. My question goes by the atmosphere that we live in. There are some people that have the thought that when the press are interviewing the president or any top official, before the interview, at times there are some sayings that the interviewers have to be issued the question that they want to ask the the executive officer or any top government official. So please, what's the truth behind this issue? And the second question it is that there are some sayings that also there are some compromise within the press that in terms of if there is insecurity for the sake of safety, if for instance an attack or a particular portion of the country or particular state, the number of people were being killed. So at times, is it for safety that sometimes the media, the information, they will reduce the number of the casualties. For instance, if you have a phone call with the person living in the area and the press information that was being given the press, you will. So this is just the clarity that I want to have with respect to press.
Okay, Musa, very good questions. First one regarding interviewing high profile individuals, especially government individuals. All over the world, the press has to contend with this. While we have a job to do, and I've talked about independence, we need to be independent and free to do what we need to do on behalf of the people. It's very important. While we do that, don't forget the media handlers of these individuals, especially politically exposed persons. They don't want to inject their principles into environments where they are not able to control the narrative. They don't want to walk into what they consider an ambush situation. So many times, yes, they would tell you what questions do you want to ask and this, that, and the other. I'll give you an example. I chased an interview once for about 2.5 years until the man finally, no, 2 years, until he finally agrees. It was the Defense Headquarters spokesperson at that time, General Olukolade. That's what it was. When he finally agreed to come down, he went to my managing director's office. I was summoned and he said, all right, unannounced. He just showed up and said, well, Camry, I've listened to you, so I'm ready. Let's have the interview. And then he said, I'm not here to be embarrassed. I'm not here for this, that, and the other. And I said, look, sir, you missed the point. The questions I need to ask you are questions that I believe are on the minds of many Nigerians. This is number one. Number two, it is not our intention to invite you here to embarrass you. How does embarrassing a public official move this country forwards? I don't understand it. I did understand that he was nervous. He was about to walk into a situation that he did not know. Then he asked the questions. So what questions will you ask me? I said, here's the thing. I'm not going to ambush you. I want us to have a conversation about, one, civil-military relations. Two, the capacity of our military, because people are getting really, really concerned about these terrorists and what they're doing. This was far back 2015, 2014. So I said, inside, these are my areas of concern. What the questions will be, I don't know. That's why I said we're going to have a conversation. This is the reason I want to have this conversation with you. We got in there. The first question I asked him, took him aback. I did it just to put him at his ease, because if he's not at ease, he can't give me information. And he has walked into the proverbial lion's den without knowing what was coming. So I asked him and I said, why does military personnel refer to civilians as bloody civilians? And he was shocked. And he obviously, told me a lot of BS. He said, well, it's a term of endearment and this, that, the other. We had a good laugh and we moved on. And as again, a trained journalist, there are certain questions that you should not ask in public relating to security. It doesn't take rocket science. For example, I'm not going to go and ask the theater commander of Operation Lafia Dole questions like, well, these people, they seem to be attacking us. What are you going to do next? Please, come on. Use your brain. Why would he, even if I was silly enough to ask that question, why would he answer the question when you know very well the enemy is listening? So it's a pointless question. Now, as to the question of casualties, that's a difficult one. The former secretary to the government of the Federation, before he was SGF, that's a Boss Mustafa, his daughter came up to me and she had this very, very good project she was working on. It was called Fallen Heroes. It was a program meant to honor people who had fallen, our soldiers, and also to give their families, some kind of candle to hold on to, that, yes, look, my loved one, my breadwinner is no longer with us now, but he didn't die for anything. People appreciate him for the work and the sacrifice of laying down his life, which is a very good thing. Many countries have it in different ways. So I bought in and I went to the military headquarters. I come from a third-generation military family, by the way. I go to the military headquarters and I say, look, this is what we want to do, and this is the reason why. 2 reasons. One, we need people to know that when they die, every single death of every single soldier matters to us. We will honor you. We will love you. We will praise you for your sacrifice. It's the way you give them the morale. You boost them to go and do what you and I cannot do. Criticize them as much as you can. We need them. So we need to peak their morale. And secondly, it also helps the grieving families. Maybe you'll even see their children joining the armed forces saying, look, my dad was a hero. I'm going to be a hero. I'm going to join the armed forces as well. We need to keep promoting this. There are countries you go to where military people, when you rarely see them walking in town with their uniforms, when they get on a bus, people stand up for them. Please have a seat. Thank you for your service. So we need to imbibe this sort of culture. The problem I had was they refused to tell me the exact number of casualties. Off the record, the defense PermSec told me, he said, the truth of the matter is the enemy is inflicting heavy casualties on us. If we do this thing now, it will be formally recognizing the casualty they are inflicting on us, and it will further embolden them. We like this idea, we like this project. But right now, until we turn the tables, if we do this, we are playing into their hands. Again, as I say, as a journalist, the right of the people to know, we'll talk about this during the course of this lecture, the right of the people to know is sacred, but there's some information that could also harm the people. But you'll be there thinking, well, we have to disclose it. National security is a very, very delicate thing. Defense correspondents are carefully trained. And contrary to what many people think, no, we're not trained to lie. Again, you are trained along the ethics of the profession. A lot of the times, you will be called to make your own judgment calls. This thing I'm doing, as I said, one of the principles in our profession, do no harm. This thing I'm putting out, is it going to harm the people or is it going to help the people? So I hope that answers that question. I see the ED's hands up. ED.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. And you know, this conversation is always very, very interesting when you talk about the fourth estate. And you know, the first thing we need to understand, and you know, most conversations we've had, is that we cannot continue to, and Cameron, we've had these conversations multiply. We cannot continue to undermine the political illiteracy of the electorate, which causes 80% of the problem of people in the fourth estate. So here's the conversation. The average Nigerian thinks a journalist is a liar. Really? Do you understand? Even within this class, really? When I had those questions, I was like, okay, it's going to really be hard to move forward. People talk about sensationalism. Somebody earlier made a comment on some media houses showing a particular, I will help the person, the TV station. I know you can't call stations, I can. The TV station he was trying to refer to was TVC and APC adverts. No problem. But nobody will pick up the fact that Arise TV is showing a massive amount of Labour Party adverts. Why? Because you support that. So whenever you hear a Nigerian complain about something, I can sense your bias on exactly what you represent or who you supported politically, whether it was PDP, APC, just from a statement you make. And these continuous problems, okay, fine. You've never thought that maybe along the line, sometimes it's not even totally planned. Like the AIT is kind of good with the PDP. That's because the AIT itself, it doesn't mean it wouldn't show an APC advert. It just means the AIT head is a what they call it, is a PDP, or the late AIT head used to be a PDP member. So his market will be his friends. Your first market is your friends. What else would you get along with? And you know, these conversations are always, you know, there's somebody I wouldn't like to mention his name. I'm really bothered with him. But you know, he's a journalist, and there's one that calls himself an investigative journalist online too. And they rile a lot of Nigerians up with, you know, crap, which is totally politically irrelevant. And I keep saying it, that these people rile so much emotions up that in the end, Nigerians model what's important and what isn't. For the other one of them was, I remember, caught driving the other way, and he asked, do you know who I am? He was breaking the law, but the government should not break the law. To the other investigative journalist on social media, I remember he escaped out of Nigeria, threatening that because he was gay, he was wanted for some funny reason. The whole corporate, so, but you know, we can't have that conversation on them, but they are investigative journalists. Let's leave it at that. But my point now is, which I'm going to put towards you. Cameron, you know, I'm quite concerned with the media. I'm on the media a lot. I've always had this conversation and I don't understand it. Why does the media engage instead of saying a Nigerian in Mushin? Why do they use words like a Hausa man in Mushin, or an Igbo man in Kano, or a thief man in Port Harcourt? I feel this nomenclature being used helps undermine the core essence of creating a Nigerian identity. And that's the question I wanted to ask. Thank you very much.
Edie, you've hit the nail on the head. My managing director and I, sorry, for those who are not informed, my managing director is Kadri Ahmed. So we abhor identity politics. I don't play it. I don't support it. I don't believe in it. I think it's absolutely disgraceful. It is keeping this country back. A thief is a thief first, before anything else. Labeling the thief doesn't help anyone's cause. I've got my ethnic group. If you are going to judge me based on where I'm from, you will be missing the mark. And I'm going to say this. I come from the northeastern part of the country. I'm from Adamawa. So if you're going to look at my ethnic group and try to profile me, you have missed the mark. I didn't grow up at home. I know my culture, I know my tradition, but most of the things that inform my decisions and choices are based on my foundational upbringing at home, my education, my early exposure to societies, which have also played their parts, and even my racial identity. All these things make me who I am, not my ethnic group. So, for example, I don't know if some of you follows when she went after the BBC. Meanwhile, she worked at the BBC for decades. She went after the BBC. I was right beside her and everything. And it was over a piece that the BBC did. When they talked about, they went to meet one of the terrorists in the northwestern part of the country, Dogo Gidi. This person commits atrocities. You give him a platform, he flies his flag. It's literally showing off and saying, all sorts of things. Well, they can't do anything about it. Oh, this is how he kidnaps. Please, you're glorifying criminality. This is the BBC. The BBC laid down the ethics of, journalism, broadcasting, to be precise. Doing something like this. She went after them. I went after them. Wasn't the first time. My first time was when Boko Haram, which the ED knows, I don't name them on air. I told them anything else, but I don't name them on air because I don't want to give them oxygen. What happened is, back then, this was 2013, 2014, before the taking of the Chibok girls, you saw Western media referring to the situation in the Northeast, and they did it through an ethno-religious perspective. Very, very dangerous, especially in a country that are very sensitive about ethno-religious identities. Islamic jihadists, they hammered it into us. But people did not hear the Islamic clerics around Nigeria condemning Boko Haram in its early years. Some of them were killed in very gruesome ways, beheaded. This wasn't publicized. So it now became a religious thing that in Nigeria now, you hear the word terrorist, you think of one religion. What have we done to ourselves? So identity politics is very lethal.
Even for the BBC, where the argument comes in, and I've been on international media, and I remember it was 2019, and I was asked, okay, Nigeria's military dictator won his election again, and this was the VOA, and I said, and isn't Rumsfeld part of the US government? That's also a military family. And he said, no, we're talking about Nigeria. I said, then you don't refer to my president in that manner. You see, Nigerians have lost the identity to BBC that is talking. They are hiding the actions of Sinn Féin and other groups that are in Ireland asking to run away from. Why haven't they interviewed them? Why are they coming to Nigeria to interview Boko Haram? Do you understand? So one of the key things I think that is missing in Nigeria is Nigerians not only choose not to have an identity, they don't even respect their own identity. And that is the major crisis in Nigeria. Even for this class, most people don't think that Nigeria is something to be proud of. You are entitled to your opinion, but remember that your opinion only exists as long as it does not infringe on the freedoms of others. Thank you very much, sir.
That's it. Now, just to finally, before we move on, the questions of lying to the media and so on and so forth. I started this interactive segment by asking a question: what is Nigeria's most pressing or urgent problem? And the first question I get back is media are trained to lie. So again, it's about shifting focus. What's more relevant to you? Addressing the problems in a country, or asking me why some journalists are scoundrels? Because some of them are, some of us are. Some of us are just not very nice people. Some of us are simply in it for the profit. Some of us are in it for political sentiments to play to our paymasters. So they're different kinds of journalists, just like they're different kinds of people. I can't control that. I don't know if trying to seek to control that will move this country forwards. But the question was, what's our country's most urgent problem? And the next question was to have been, why are we in this mess today? But I think it's about determining, in my humble opinion, what our focus will be. What is relevant to us? What do we consider to be relevant? What's important to us? You know, I think we should always keep that uppermost in our minds. All right, so here's the thing. The economy, economy security, these are very important conversations in any country. We've been talking about these things. And why is Nigeria in the economic mess it is today? Under the economic mess, you could talk about the cost of living, you could talk about unemployment and so on. How did we get to this point? All right, I see Precious Faith. Josiah, I see your hand up. Precious, please go ahead. Why are we in this mess today? Precious?
Hello,
yes.
good evening. Oh, okay, so I'm not responding to the question you asked. I actually have a question. I want to know if that's fine.
Go ahead.
Okay, then. So earlier you mentioned that journalists apply balance when reporting, right? So like they have certain information, and then they can't for whatever reason, right? They cannot make public every single information, so they withhold some and whatever. So they employ balance. So I wanted to know what's the basis for achieving this balance, because I was thinking about it and I'm like, this balance, isn't it relative? Like, isn't it relative to maybe the particular event, for example, that they need to report, or the particular person, that they're talking about or something? Like, isn't it relative? And if it's relative, how exactly do you achieve balance? Right. So that's my question. And then I also want to know how do you confirm the information you receive? Like, do you just get information from one source and that's okay, or you need like 10 sources to corroborate a particular a particular narrative or event or whatever, for you to confirm that, okay, this information can be presented to the public? Thank you.
Okay,
Camry,
yes,
I would like to answer part one of that, because I would like to come from a constitutional point. I don't want to, so that, it's clear, because not a journalistic point, actually. It's actually from a constitutional point. Then you answer part two. So I didn't get to ask the question. Precious, am I right? Yes, Precious asked the question. Precious, are you there?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, Precious. First and foremost, do you know the position of any country and its constitution on national security? So it's like, how would I put it? Okay, let me try to use an analogy that is quite simple for everyone to understand. The way within your family you say we don't wash our dirty linen outside, so that other families do not make fun of us, or other will not be a mockery to other families. You understand that principle, right?
Yeah, I get that.
Yes. So countries kind of function on that thing. The sovereignty of a country and the protection of its sovereignty is more important than how you feel or whatever happens. And that is regardless of who dies in the case or whatever. It's not that it's saying that the citizens are not important. It acknowledges their death. But you must stabilize the need for the sovereignty of the country to remain intact. Now, I'll give you an example. If Nigeria looks like it's lost 3 states to insurgents, and it's saying it's lost 3 states, what do you think will happen in eastern Nigeria? The agitation there will become more. The agitation in South will become more, if that is public news. it will embolden other insurgents to continue acting, meaning you have a bigger problem at hand. Are you following?
I get that.
Are you sure you get it? Yeah? Because the truth is, every country must protect itself first before any other thing. So sometimes it's not like I'll give the same option with Israel. Israel too didn't give the exact amounts of people kidnapped and etc. etc. So would Hamas also not give exactly what exactly it will show what's happening in Gaza, but it wouldn't show what exactly it's done that mitigated Israel. It's how would I put it? It's understanding sovereignty. And I think when we get to the Constitution, which you're going to do in ahead, you're going to understand why these decisions are taken. So these decisions are not emotional. I'll tell you something. The citizens of a country do not know what's best for it. It might sound like I look like a tyrant when I say that. But the truth is, if today I'm to make a bigger expressway, do you understand, for people to enjoy free flow of traffic, I'm going to upset some people's houses. Not everybody is going to be happy. So 40% of the population might be happy about the roads. 40% might be unhappy because of the fact that the road goes through their houses and scatters everything. Do you understand? And they have to, some of them will have to vacate their premises. And 20% are indifferent. And that's the way government runs. The citizens actually don't know what's good for them, being honest, across in any country. They actually don't know what's good for them. So sometimes when you're going to make decisions, you don't make them because of emotional reasons. Like we mentioned, as regards sovereignty and etc. You do not make them because of emotional reasons. Yes, a government has a duty to its people. And one of the duties to its people is also to protect its people. And sometimes this protection might be not releasing the full information. I know this sounds funny, but it's just like you're maybe the head of a house or you're a parent in a house. Your children are going to school tomorrow. You don't have any money, but of course you're still trying to get money, to buy their snacks. You don't tell them there's no food for you to go to school tomorrow. You give them that hope that there is an existence of control. Thank you.
Thank you, Edie. I think that was well put. To the second part of your question, Precious, look, it's not about 10 different media houses are looking into a situation, and then I go and check with 9. And if 9 say the same thing, I would take it. In my media house, we don't do that. We don't do that. Our verification process is very, very straightforward. As it stands now, let me start with online media. That's the most accessible one. There are some media houses, a handful, okay, that I would pay attention to. And the reason I pay attention to them is because we have personal relationships with them. We understand their ethics, their guiding principles, and their direction of journalism. So we'd first look at them because they're online. Secondly, we have a network where we can reach any part of the country through very credible sources that we have carefully built. These are parts of our verification tool. Thirdly, obviously, it will be getting directly to the stakeholders. Like our conversations that we have on air, we try to speak to the stakeholders more than we do so-called analyst this, analyst that. So these are parts of the verification process that we carry out in our newsroom. We're a small company. We don't have a branch in every state. So we've been compelled to rely on these credible sources. But if you go online, for example, look at Nigerian newspapers online, you see one headline, you see 9 or 10 different papers are taking it. If the investigating reporter, the originator of that piece, made an error, the other 9 media houses that simply copy and paste will also copy and paste that error. We don't do that. Okay? It's challenging. Yes. So as I said, third-party verification, we have relationships with, I will tell you now, 4 media houses out of the over 30 in this country. There are 4 that we know their processes. In fact, at some point or the other, we worked together. So our training is very similar. Our ethos is very similar. The way we go about our journalism is very similar. The best I can say is this. If you look at some grant funding agencies, we come under the umbrella of one. We get a lot of grants from one because they recognize the importance of the work we do. It's about the public good. You can also use that phrase for the question the ED answered when it comes to information management or building a road. Some people will be heard, some will not, but it always has to be about the public good. Once it's not about the public good and the majority, then you need to question your morals. But this grant-giving agency, which is well known for giving grants to credible media that is moving democracy and democratic conversations and practices along, they shortlisted just us. You look there, you'll see our names and everything. That's all I can say on that. But verification, no, we have our in-house. I don't take anyone's word for it. As a journalist, if you call me up now and tell me, Mr. Kanu, the time is 20 minutes past 6, I won't take your word for it. I will check my laptop, my phone, and my other phone. It's my training. Okay, I hope that answers that part of the question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Right, so let's move it along because we're pressed for time now. Why are we in the mess we are today? Again, the economic mess, the current narrative. Again, there's a lot of politicization of information in the country, which is not doing us any good. The power of a democracy, comes from the people. Democracy is a numbers game. It's a numbers game. Just the other day, somebody was telling me on air, Mr. Cameron, you can't remove these people from office. And I said, absolute codswallop. Ridiculous. I talked about the process with Senator Dino Melaye, Kogi West Senatorial District. And he said, well, that one didn't work now. He did. I said, no, you missed the point. You have the power to put this legislator in office. You also have the power to remove him. INEC's rules are very clear. If more than 50% of the registered voters in his constituency write to INEC and say they want him recalled, once it is more than 50%, it has triggered a constitutional action on INEC. INEC then comes to the constituency and does a verification of those signatures, which means all over again, the people that said we want to recall him, they now need to say, yes, I said I want him recalled, because they have to verify. Who's to say that somebody wasn't signing for somebody else or somebody didn't coerce someone? So when they come, they carry out that second verification. And in the case of Senator Melaye, it was during the second verification, some people who initially said they want to recall him, they changed their minds. And that's how democracy works. Why they changed their minds? Hey, I'm not there with them. I didn't ask them. But if they had stood and said, yes, we want him recalled, INEC would have gone to the next phase, basically. And it ends up with INEC writing to the House, no, the Senate at that time, because it was a senator, writing to the president of the Senate and saying, this seat is now declared vacant by virtue of, and they will quote the relevant parts. That is the process of recall. So when you start to tell us, hey, we can't recall, well, that's up to you. The process is very straightforward. It's about people who share the same belief. If the numbers are correct, it will happen. Along the line, if one or two of us decide to change our minds, it is democracy. If I decide to collect Senator Malaya's money, for example, and say, Kai, do you know what? This man is so nice. I don't want him recalled again. It's democracy. The system works. So this narrative, we keep pushing that it doesn't work. It's not helping us. It's the same thing with the economic conversation. Right now, what is literally going on, and the media is front and center of this. The media predominantly is focused on the current administration. And the general narrative is, well, he did say he asked for the job. They should not make excuses. Don't forget, the last administration made many excuses to us. It wasn't us, it was them, 16 years. It wasn't us, it was them for 16 years. So I see us heading into that cycle again. And sadly, it has been driven by the media. What the media needs to focus on is, in situations like this, first of all, what do other countries do? How did they manage it? What should we be doing? What is going to work for us? These are the questions that are important, not giving oxygen to somebody to just come up and say, this one is clueless, this one is this, that, the other. That's political speak. Political speak has its own place. But again, when the predominance of information is politicized, we run into a problem. And that's where the media is today. We are at that point again. Oh, these people, they don't know. They weren't ready. They weren't this, that, the other. There are many things that are going on. There's a lot of noise. And we're not focusing enough on actions and solutions. Everyday Nigerians that are engaging in conversations that are being anchored by the media, I fear we are moving further away from the solution, and instead we are finding new ways of redefining a problem which already is before us. If the horse is dead, it is dead. It doesn't matter how many words you come up with to tell me the horse is dead. The horse is dead. We need to move along, get another horse, bury this dead horse, find out how to carry our loads if it was carrying loads. Things need to happen. But right now we're standing and we're pointing, we're saying the horse is dead, the horse is dead, the horse is dead. Media is in the front and center of this. So that's the big challenge. How do we change the fortunes of the country? It's about understanding the problem. In a democracy, the other day, ED, I had in the studio, Mr. Funsho Doherty. He was a gubernatorial candidate for Lagos. And his gentleman I find interesting because what he's been doing since the general elections, the gubernatorial elections in Lagos, what he's been doing is he's come up with alternative ways of getting the job done. So he's not dwelling on this man should leave. He doesn't know what he's doing. That is a Babajide Sanwo-Olu. Hey, these people are clueless. He's not told that path. The path he is told, and that is why he came to my attention, is he has essentially formed what is known, or is forming what is known as a shadow cabinet. Now, the media has a huge responsibility to play, and that is to support ideas like this. So he has my support. As I speak to you right now, I'm having conversations with him. I'm trying to understand who his team are. I want to investigate them. Are they credible people? Do they know how to get the job done? If they tick all those boxes, the next thing I intend to do is to find a way to bring him into conversations about governance. Say, for example, now we're talking about the state of the economy. What do we do first? Do we halt inflation? Is there something else we should do? Should we try to rescue the Naira? Should we now? There's the IMF conversations of letting go of subsidy on electricity. So instead of getting somebody to tell me the catastrophe that would happen, should this government agree to do that? I want someone to tell me, no, we don't have to do that. Here's what we can do. So this is where the media comes in. As I said, he has essentially, I told him the other day, I said, sir, what you have going on here is the basis of a shadow cabinet. That's what happens in the UK. Once a government is sworn in and put in place, the opposition immediately forms a shadow cabinet. And the responsibility of that shadow cabinet is to find a better way of doing things. So that when the government, sitting government says, this is what's happening, this is what we're doing, the shadow cabinet says, this is not the best way, this is how we would do it. Now, the complication there, which is one thing he asked me, is people might be concerned that you will now be showing your enemy this. And I said, no, this is not. The concept of nation building demands that if you say, let us do this and do it this way, and I come and tell the people, if it was me, this is the road I will go. What it means is win or lose, whether they adopt you, sitting government's way, or me, shadow cabinet's way, whether it's adopted or not, what ends up happening is the country, basically the country grows and improves. The conversation is deepened. People become more aware of options. And trust me, when the next election cycles come, you don't have to make as much noise to show you have capacity because, hey, guess what? For the last 4 years, you have been showing the country that, see, I have what it takes to get this thing done. Like Shore, he's just been, his case has been discontinued by the federal government, his a trial on treason. There are some things he did say. I was listening to him yesterday and I sent him a message. I want to have a conversation with him next week because during his campaign, he talked about the devaluation. He talked about many things happening today, but people didn't listen. Why? Maybe it's because he's Shore and maybe because he's not an economist. Well, here you go. You know, many things that he said are coming to pass and he gave reasons why we shouldn't go in this direction. So the concept of shadow cabinet, it's very important in moving a democracy forwards. This is one way the country can change that conversation. As I said, my media house, this is what we're looking at. Now, we're just one media house. We're not the whole of Nigeria. We don't have the national coverage that some other media houses have. But we truly believe in order to move a country forwards, we need to raise the collective consciousness of that country by promoting good ideas. Even if it's one person you convince, one could lead to 2 to 3 to 10. This is the concept of democracy. On my page, I put up something the other day, and I truly believe on that. And it's this: the aim of debate is not about winning or losing. It is about deepening the conversation. If we can get many people to understand this, we will start to move ahead. It's not about winning or losing. It's about deepening the conversation. It's about moving the country forward. It's about improving the intellectual capacity of the country. Once we hit a critical mass, you'll start to see results. Because right now, there are many people who are not the elite like you. They're not educated. They're not bothered. They've got their voters' card and they're determining your president, your governor, your local government chairman, and so on. I don't have to tell you this. You know this. So it's important we reach a critical mass. One question for you to think on as we move forwards. Why does the United States of America have a president that is not elected by the people, but is elected by an electoral college? Why is that? Because, hey, the everyday American goes to the polls and expresses his preference for one person or the other, one party or the other. So why is there an electoral college that is the one that is constitutionally empowered to elect a president? The people can vote for their preference, but who actually elects the US president? Think about that for a second. All right, so the focus of our political conversation, this is what brings me to it now. What is the focus of our political conversation? This last question before we move along. Anyone? I see a hand up. Are you going to answer this current question? I'd like to have someone who's not answered the question before. Let's hear from you. Okay. All right, we've got Ubokobong Umoren. Ubokobong Umoren, please go ahead. What is the current focus of political conversation? Political. I'm not talking economic or security. I said political right now in Nigeria. Yeah? Ubokobong.
Thank you very much, sir. Please, can you rephrase, please?
What is the current focus of political conversation in Nigeria today?
Well, honestly, I believe in what I'm seeing on the space politically right now. I think it's a conversation about the performance of the governance of the government, the activities of the government, and how relevant it is on our present well-being, affecting each of us individually as a nation. I believe that's what's going on politically.
Okay, thanks so much, Ubokobong. Let me hear from somebody else. Musa Saliu. Abga. I see Abga there. Nice one. Go
on. So, considering the current atmosphere is of political in Nigeria, it is the response of other political parties pointing to the right point that the current government need to focus on in terms of policy and management.
Okay.
But to the ruling party, they consider that as critics, and considering the other parties as enemies of progress. But that's the let's call a spade a spade.
Okay. I like the last part there. Sadio says, let's call a spade a spade. Let's call your spade your spade, I think is the best way to put that. All right, we got, okay, we already Justin Agogo. Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening, sir. I think the current focus of political conversation in Nigeria is about the system of government that we are running and state policing. It has taken a center stage in political discussions on and off political stage, because a lot of stakeholders have spoken about it. A lot of prominent political actors have spoken about it in the social media. It is there in the newspaper. It is there. I think that is the focus of the current conversation. Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much. We are much appreciated. One more. Elugbaju, Mitch. Was it Michael? Elugbaju.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hello. Is it Mitch or Michael?
Michael. Good evening.
Right, evening, yeah. Michael.
I post towardly greetings to you as much. Greetings, sir. Good evening.
Thank you.
Good evening. Yes, sir. I think one of the most, the probably major problems of the political and social influence in Nigeria is we need prosecuting counsel. We need to advance them as much of our tax as expandly be put down. As an electoral district, we have 3 steps majorly to move forward. For some of them, deadlines have been put back. And the mode of government that says are backbenchers, we have a public influence that's make us to influence government policies. So if only I insist, the most of the prosecuting council is advanced, we can majorly move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elugbaju Michael. Right, the last one now, Ahmad Mohammed.
Hello?
Ahmad Mohammed Labbo, yes, go ahead.
Okay, I think the current trend that is going on in Nigeria, like my brother here who is said, it's all about the system that Nigeria is under now, governing system. They are proposing, like I saw yesterday on the news, about parliamentary system of government, presidential in collaboration with each other. They are already passing the bill. I think it's on its second reading or first reading. And secondly, it's about the state policing, which is creating a lot of controversies and so on the social media and the media houses. So that's the current trend now that is going on.
Right, thank you very much. Well captured and articulated, everyone. So, these are the conversations you want to see in the media space. And the important thing is when we get into this conversation as the media, we stay focused. We don't want any distractions because the media is fond of these distractions. This is where sensationalism comes in because of clickbait. Instead of focusing on an issue, you'll be telling people about who's jumping out of a moving car and so on and so forth. No. Forget those distractions. We in the media put out these distractions because there's a huge market for it, because that's what captures the interest of some people. Ahmed Mohammed, you can mute yourself now. So it's about staying focused. While you are dealing with today's problems, you also need to be aware that tomorrow will come with its own problems, which means we need to keep an eye out for tomorrow's problems. Problem solving in many countries are done along three terms: the short, the medium, the long term. They're short-term problems. They're things that need to be tackled today, like palliatives and whatnot. These are short terms. They're not solutions. You've got midterm. These are things like education and so on and so forth. And then you've got longer term, which is the national identity. What direction do we want to move the country in? I was speaking to one of the directors in the NOA. They're about to launch what is known as the National Values Charter, which is the contract between the government and the people and the government. They're deliberately crafting what is already clearly written in the Constitution. One of the questions I asked the director was, what is our national identity? And he couldn't answer the question. And I said, this is the reason why we need to have this conversation. What is Nigeria's national identity? Because right now, many people seem to think it's something negative. Hey, they are sharp, they're scammers, 419, this, that, the other. We need to do everything we can to make sure that is not our national identity. We have other solid values and qualities, but we don't see it and we're not collectively promoting it. There's a problem somewhere. So the National Values Charter, I'm looking forward to the launch. It will help streamline and give us direction, because here's the thing, whether we like it or not, whether we know it or not, nation building is not an organic act. It is deliberate, it is strategic. I'll give an example. About 15, 20 years before Barack Obama came on the scene, American film industry has started to show American citizens Black presidents, Black female presidents in their movies, in their literature. They were literally sensitizing the people, because if the ground is not prepared, when you plant the seed, it won't take root. So nation building, as I said, is a deliberate act. It is not organic. It can't just be allowed to be what it will be. It needs to be shaped, guided, and formed. Another case, the Chinese. I know that during the 80s, 90s, well, I don't know about 90s, 70s, 80s, the Olympics were dominated by the USSR, former USSR, and the United States of America. China, another big country, thought to themselves, hey, we're missing in this picture. We need to do something. Incidentally, they spent a long time conditioning and developing athletes to do one thing, to get on the medals table and top the medals table. Couple of generations later, where are they? They started to top the medals table. They didn't just sit back and wait for Chinese children, in their tens of millions to just develop an interest in gymnastics, football, long jump. No, they deliberately set up programs to raise people along those lines. So nation building is not organic. It must be deliberate. It must be strategic. And the media has a huge role to play. All right, let's look at another effect of journalism on, governance: commitment to truth. As a very new person in the media industry, when I joined up, my boss called me into his office, my managing director then, and he asked me a question, about brown envelopes. And he said, "Camry, would you take a brown envelope if no one was watching?" Immediately, I told him no. The reason I told him no is because, fortunately, I had the benefit of not being 18 or young and inexperienced. I'd seen some part of life. If you listen to my intro, I've been involved in a couple of industries before coming up to journalism. So I immediately said no, because I realized one thing. If you're going to stop and pick up these tiny little pebbles, your journey is going to be longer and longer. I want to get to a stage in my profession where I have acquired enough skill, experience, and knowledge. I'm smart enough to know that when I have these things, I would have created what to be value. And I'm experienced enough to understand that money chases value. That's simply the rule of life. If you create the solution to a problem, the money finds you. But if you go out looking for the money first, I don't know, it's going to be a difficult one for you, literally. So I told my boss no immediately. And I told him, he said, he was very cynical. He said, "Yeah, right, I don't believe you, Camry." And I said, honestly, I would not collect it. And I said, the reason is because I want a brown container, not a brown envelope. If I stop and collect every brown envelope that's given to me, I will never make it to the brown container. I want the container, which is I want to be the best in my business. I want to go straight to the top, where money is no longer a consideration for me. For example, as I am now, please feel free. Edie, I hope you don't mind. Feel free. You can take this where you want to. As I am right now, if you want me to come and anchor a conversation for you, or a conference, or this, that, the other, I will take nothing less than the equivalent of $1,000, whatever the exchange rate is. And yes, I will take it in Naira, because I don't believe in dollarizing my country, my economy. So you want me to go and moderate or do a discussion for you? I don't want to take less than $1,000. What is $1,000 today? I don't know. Yesterday it was about 1.5 million. Why? Because I have created that value and knowledge base for myself. So if I stopped to pick up all the brown envelopes I was given, I wouldn't have the credibility I have today. People that I call up today will not answer my call, because they'll think, this journalist is calling to beg for money again. And all the other things that comes with being principled. When you're principled, you stick to your ethics. Trust me, it takes you a very long way. A colleague of mine who retired from the business, well, not retired because he's still involved in the periphery, but he took a backseat in the business, will tell you today that he got out of the business about 8 years ago, thereabouts. But up till today, he is still feeding from the reputation he built in the business, which is he's still getting offers for consulting and this, that, the other, because of the reputation he built in the business. So no, I wouldn't collect the brown envelope. I've got a passion, and my ethos has always been, honestly, I'm very curious. I've got insatiable thirst for knowledge. I want to feed my passion by, again, being the very best at what I do. The thing is, as far as the media goes, I'm just one person. The reason I'm able to speak like this is because, again, I've had the training I've had the foundation at home I've had experiences I've had, and so on and so forth. So do I get tempted? Yes, I'm a human being. We all do. Let's stop kidding ourselves. But what it is the reason I don't cross the line into collecting brown envelopes or doing something unethical is that my core identity, my core base as a journalist, where I get my strength and ethos from, is so strong that when the temptation comes, it's easy for me to laugh and say no and just walk off. Literally, it's that simple. Doesn't matter what it is. Somebody there's probably thinking, if we give him 100 million, let's see what it does. It's the same answer. It's the same answer. That 100 million could wreck everything I've done up until this point. Do I have 100 million today? No, I don't. But I'm smart enough to think money is not my problem. Why? Because I know I will always have access to it whenever I need it, because of the reputation I'm trying to continue keep building for myself. So it's not a problem for me. Your 100 million, your 1 billion. No, money is a tool. I can say that because fortunately, I'm in a situation where I'm able to meet my responsibilities financial without doing anything dodgy or criminal. It's simply how it works. So again, as I said, I'm just one individual. I'm just trying to make my mark. I believe I'm in a position to make these choices because of my foundation. Now, without question, the principles of the members of the fourth estate of the realm, our role of holding government to account on our behalf is very, very important. Some of you talked about lying and this, that, the other. Here's the thing. Some of you will go on your life's journey, your professional journey, you will go on to play very significant roles in the world of politics. Now, there might be some of you who will look to manipulate the fourth estate in your favor. Let's bribe the journalists to do this or say that. I'm not going to sit here and be your judge or moralize or something. No, I'm not in that position to. Thank you very much. I'm not the judge of anyone. But while you are here, I will tell you this. Everything you do in life carries a cost. Everything you don't do in life also carries with it a cost. Basically, it's our responsibility to make sure that we simply are able to meet up with these costs when life presents us with the bill. It's simply how it works. Life will give you a bill. Can you pay it? If you can't pay it, there's going to be wahala. If you can pay it, you pay it, you move on to the next one. That's how it works. Finally, disinformation and misinformation. This is a critical one, especially in the world of media today. There are many credible media houses who are doing a pretty decent job of holding government accountable. I would like to think my media house is one of those, and I say that with every sense of modesty, okay? But even the best of us sometimes will manipulate information. Many people regard misinformation as, well, when you hear misinformation, you just think lying, as a couple of you have said earlier on. That's why I said I'm being careful with my response. Misinformation is not entirely correct. Now, what is the difference? Misinformation is the accidental sharing of inaccurate or false information, okay? Accurate or false information, whereas disinformation is the deliberate sharing of inaccurate or false information. So in one case, somebody shares without knowing this thing is not good. In another, the person knows it's not good and they share it because they have an agenda. Very, very harmful disinformation is. Now, in our industry, we are compelled to report the facts as they are, not as we want them to be. This is what drives and guides our profession as well. Report the facts as they are, not, hey, I think it's like this. No, no, no. Don't think. Just simply, what do you see? Look at this thing. What do you see? Report it. It's straightforward. Now, I like to tell the story of a particular media house, which joined other media houses for a press briefing by our security agencies after violence claimed a lot of lives in the state. The armed forces were there, police, Air Force, Navy, Army, NSCDC, they were all there and everything. And they handed out their statements in hard copy to the press. Some of them come with prepared statements, which they share among the media so that we don't misconstrue their words. Now, this particular media house reported all security agencies and whatnot, all right? It reported that all security agencies gave statements except the police, which, according to the media house, they said could not be reached for comments. Now, here's the thing. This media house enjoys a significant followership, both nationally and internationally, and it's very, very probable that through that report, they left some of their listeners or followers with the impression that the Nigerian police force didn't consider the matter at hand serious enough to, make a statement. That's the impression they ended up giving their followers. Now, this narrative could further widen what is basically a chasm of trust. There's a chasm of distrust between, the people and the police force. We already have this issue between the people and the police force. What it is I expected the media house to use the influence it has to not only demand professional conduct from the people that are trained and entrusted constitutionally with the powers of law enforcement, instead of not just demanding from them, but also do what they can to bridge this gap that exists between people and the police. Let's try to close that gap. It's in our best interest. If that gap is closed, if the relationship is good, we will be safer. That's simply how it works. But they didn't do that. Now, without question, I was sad at their conduct. I have a lot of regard for them. I still do. Okay, but this was one moment that shows how things can go the other way. Now, I asked myself, but why would they do this? This is a credible media house. So I went digging, and I found out that about 1 week to the day of that press briefing, an editor and a senior correspondent of the media house, they were arrested and detained by the police. The thing is, this wasn't the first time that it happens, because the media house is always going into investigative pieces. And just like us, if you're into accountability journalism, you will run foul of the law sometimes. It means basically they show up on the blacklisted pages of the government every now and then because of the good work they do of holding government to account. So by excluding the statements of the Nigerian police force from the general report, I read that to be their way of fighting back against the police, thinking, oh, well, you guys are treating us badly, we'll ignore you, we won't carry any of your news and statements. But the danger there is people would believe the police didn't care, and it would further widen that chasm. So that's the thing. Now, it's very, very challenging, and it's getting more challenging every day to be able to discern between accurate and inaccurate information. I'll tell you the reason why. One of the things is the advent of AI, artificial intelligence, has proven to be a double-edged sword for us in the media. Now, in the hands of a scoundrel or somebody who's totally unscrupulous and degenerate, forgive my use of the words, but in the hands of a scoundrel, AI is a formidable disinformation tool. Disinformation at the highest level is very difficult to counter as far as the everyday Nigerian is concerned. People don't have the training, the knowledge, the tools to be able to discern what is real and not real, especially when you're dealing with AI. Decades ago, the world held the view that pictures say 1,000 words. Today, you have to ask yourself, you really have to ask yourself if this thing that you are seeing with your eyes in a video is real or not. It is difficult. It has compounded the situation. Right, the last one is information management and the right of the people to know. So I think, was it Patience or Precious who was talking earlier on? ED answered some of this. I have a personal experience myself. This was in 2015. Now, do the people have the right to know? The answer is yes. The people have a right to know. Or is it? Do we have a right to know everything? Do we have a right to know? I mean, think about it again. So when you ask initially, do the people have the right to know? Your immediate instincts might be, yes, we have the right to know. But the answer is, do we really have a complete right to know everything all the time? It's difficult. Now, in 2015, towards Christmas, I went into the northeastern part of the country. I went to Borno. Now, this was the height of terrorist activity. Very important I state this. And my mission was twofold. First, I went with some relief materials that were donated by my radio station's listeners and well-wishers for the internally displaced persons who by then were pouring into the camps in Maiduguri. This is about 2015, December, okay? So my job was to report back and give accounts to the people who made the donations. Yeah, we've got the videos, we interviewed them, here they are, they appreciate your gesture, and so on and so forth. That was one part of it. The second part of my job was to see how our troops were faring in the front lines, and to also bring back their Christmas messages and greetings to their families, because they were out there at war, literally, and this was Christmas season. While some of us were thinking about how much we could afford to buy chicken and rice, these guys were still out there away from their families, fighting the enemy on our behalf. So bringing that Christmas message was the gift we wanted to give them from my media house. Well, as it went on, over 3 days, we shared the relief items. There were that many, thousands and thousands of people. Trust me, it was dusk to dawn exercise for 3 days. There was quite a lot. But my second assignment had me in a conflicted state. I discovered that the troops who were garrisoned in Maiduguri itself, this is the capital, they were not being fed as it went due. Remember, I told you one thing. I said I come from a 3-generation military family, so I'm very familiar with their operations and so on and so forth, grown around the uniform all my life. The military mess truck should ideally make 2 rounds a day, dawn to dusk, when they change guards and so on and so forth. But on some days in Maiduguri, the truck would not show up on some days, which was weird for me because, look, these people, they're literally in a warlike situation. Every 100 meters, you see sandbags, checkpoints. This is in the city, the capital. Imagine what it's like outside the city. That's how powerful Boko Haram was then. Now, some quick investigation revealed to me that the Nigerian treasury spent 500 naira on every soldier's feeding daily that was engaged in this action. And that amounts to 15,000 naira per month per soldier. And there were thousands of them, which means every soldier was meant to be fed at least twice a day. This clearly was not happening. Now, this is a sort of story that many journalists would grab and say, I have a scoop. This thing, let me quickly go and publish, tell people this was going on. Hey, corruption, this, that, the other. That's the initial instinct. But remember, I told you, one of the cardinal principles that guide our profession is do no harm. So I sought out and I spoke with the garrison commander. The garrison commander is literally like your admin officer for the uninformed. He's the person in charge of logistics of the unit and so on and so forth. Fortunately for me, the garrison commander was newly transferred to that part of the country, and he couldn't tell me much. I say fortunate because he was new and hadn't been ingrained into whatever shady system of operations was going on. So whatever it was that was going on, he was new and hadn't really been tainted yet. So my discussion ended with me committing him to a task. And the task was to simply remedy the situation before my return a couple of months after then. I told him, please, if this thing doesn't change, I'm a media man, I'm going to publish what I have. So that was my arrangement with the garrison commander. Fortunately, he kept to his word, as best as could be expected. So while that corrupt practice wasn't totally eradicated, there was a huge improvement at that time. Because as I said, we have people on the ground and so on and so forth. So, we get feedback. So that's what that was. Now, as a journalist, I said my mind was conflicted. I say this because I made the difficult decision, I made the difficult decision not to publish and broadcast this story that I had, which goes against many journalists, not to publish, which was basically not to inform the people, because I truly believed then, and I still believe so today. I truly believe that had I made that story public, it would have negatively affected the confidence the people had in the military leadership to defeat terror in the land at that time. Remember, this was 2015, December to be precise. By then, the bombs had gone off in Abuja the year before. Someone are going to overrun the country in Niger. Isn't in Niger? We can't stop them. So terrorism was winning our hearts and minds because we were afraid. So I believe by publishing that story, I would be feeding that negative narrative. That's truly my belief till this date. And the aim of terrorism is to turn you and I against the government, because terrorists, they don't have the numbers to stand and fight the army. So they would aim to infiltrate and literally turn brother against brother concept. It's been that way for hundreds of years. It's not a new thing. It's not a new thing. The thing is, the information that people receive affects them. And instead of informing the people, I chose to rely on my professional obligation to humanity, which is do no harm. Do no harm. I'm fortunate because it's a good thing the matter was rectified. I say it's a good thing because if it was not rectified, then that would have gone down as a truly poor professional call on my part. So, Precious, it's difficult. There is no hard and fast rule that tells you what to do, when to do. You have to trust in what you are doing and why you are doing it. I practice journalism not because I want to, build myself up. I want to be a superstar of this, that, and the other. I'm driven. It's a passion for me, especially accountability journalism. I know why I'm doing it. It's really not about me. I'm fortunate enough to say I'm sort of doing it, and then understands the impact of this thing you are doing on the people. Then you can weigh it on your conscience and your knowledge. You decide, do I put this out? Do I not? What happens if I do? What happens if I don't? Am I serving the people by putting it out? Am I serving the people? So you always have to ask these questions. It's not black and white. It is challenging. And as I said, I was fortunate because if the matter hadn't improved, then every day being fed properly would have been on my conscience and been on my head. I can't live with that. So, as I said, I was fortunate. Now, in closing, I'll just say this to men of deeply rooted principles of service. Now, this group of individuals, these people, they are better placed, better positioned to fight off the temptation to misinform the people or to look the other way. They're better placed to do all of that when it comes to wrongdoing. The state of our economy and the quality of life here makes it very challenging for people to stay true to their principles and ethics. I'm going to be honest with you. Everybody has a price. That price may not be money, but everybody has a price. And when you are in a position like a good journalist is, when you're in a position of practicing accountability journalism, just hope and pray they don't meet your price. It could be anything. It could be kidnapping your child, your spouse. Many people would compromise. It is challenging. As I said, the quality of life we live here doesn't make it easy. It makes it easier for financial inducements to take place because we're not properly paid. But please let us not despair. There are still, there's still hope. There's always hope. That's why we're having these conversations. That's why the Electoral College was set up. All hope is not lost. All you have to do is please try to look with your gut instinct, your heart. You know what is right and wrong. No one needs to tell you. You're not a kid. But if you look closely, I guarantee you, you will find these upright members of society among us. That's people who choose to do the right thing, regardless. These people, these are the sentinels, the real sentinels of our democracy. Right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Electoral College, for the opportunity once again to facilitate this topic. Wumi, I'll turn it over to you now.
Well, Camry, I'm here. I think before Wumi takes up, I'd like to thank everyone. The class was very interesting. There are 34 people that are still here. Thank you very much, Camry. Camry, you've always been a legend in broadcasting. What most people don't know is Camry gave me my first interview with Stanley Bentu. And you can imagine if you walk into the room in your first interview with Camry Apollo and Stanley Bentu, you can as well just be fed to sharks. Trust me, and have a pinch of blood on you. Trust me, these guys are thorough. But it's so amazing. They kind of created the Kuni Lawal with, right now I'm so fluid on media. It's as if I was born to do it. So I'm grateful to you guys' invitation that made me me. So thank you very much, Camry. Thank you, everyone. The Electoral College 13th cohort, I'm sure, is very grateful. I'm sure Lisa has something to say to the class or something. I'll hand over to Lisa now. Thank you very much, Camry.
Thank you, ED. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much, Mr. Camry. It's been an insightful and engaging session, as always. Thank you for always sharing with us from your wealth of experience and knowledge. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who joined. Our classes continue tomorrow. And I hope you all have a lovely evening. Thank you, ED. Thank you for joining. Thank you for all your contributions. It was quite insightful too. Good night, everyone. Thank you again, Mr. Camry.
Thank you. Good night, everyone. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.